Leadhorse Technologies is a personalized medicine company using advanced artificial intelligence-powered analytics to predict patients at risk for death or hospitalization. We do this with our clinical decision support system, Medloom. This video gives you an overview of Medloom, its capabilities, as well as how it works in concert with your existing EMR system, pharmacy system, or claims database. The problem we address is that of adverse drug events, and it's a big problem. 4,000 people die every week in the United States in spite of every drug interaction and adverse event medical reference system on the market. 2011 Health Economics Impact literature puts the cost of adverse drug events at nearly $400 billion at a minimum, or 18% of total U.S. healthcare spending. We at Leadhorse think a significant driver of that rate of weekly mortality and annual costs is because half of all life-threatening adverse events that get published in a drug label black box warning don't get published until a drug has, on average, been out on the market for more than 7 years. For that reason, a lot of deaths occur from prescribing medications in the wrong kinds of patients before doctors and pharmacists are ever made aware of the risks. The need is to provide earlier awareness of relevant, serious potential risks, while at the same time reducing the number of warnings provided so as not to contribute to the problem of alert fatigue. To address that need, regulatory agencies like FDA and EMA, and every major drug company in the world, use advanced statistical methods to analyze real-world outcomes for discovering when certain drug combinations are likely to be associated with death or hospitalization. The methods most often used are shown here, and they fall under the umbrella category of rules-based inference engines. The limitation of a rules-based inference engine is that if the rules upon which they're based are not set appropriately, a safety signal can be missed. That's likely the explanation for why the diabetes drug Avandia's drug label was not updated to reflect a risk of serious cardiovascular events until last February, only after more than 5,000 diabetic patients had died. Had the rules been set to look for safety signals in diabetics who also had a background of ischemic heart disease or were of a specific age bracket or gender, that signal might have been discovered and disseminated earlier. But that's hard to do. Recognizing that limitation, Leadhorse spent 3 years and millions of dollars applying the next generation of signal discovery technology, that is, association rule discovery, to the field of drug safety signal detection. And Medloom now runs on that rules discovery technology as opposed to a rules-based technology. Here's how that technology works. To get started, we integrated the FDA's entire MedWatch database into Medloom. That represents 14 years of data and more than 4 million adverse drug event case reports from around the world. We continue to update that dataset with approximately 150,000 new case reports every 3 months. Once those data are integrated, Medloom applies its advanced artificial intelligence analytics engine to those data, and of the billions of possible drug combinations associated with any particular adverse event in any given quarter, Medloom discovers approximately 40 million significant associations. That's without us setting any limits or rules for discovery. Well, we spent the last year of that 3-year development period setting statistical thresholds so that we don't store any of those significant associations unless they exceed thresholds for both strength and confidence. That process results in Medloom retaining only a few thousand significant adverse event medication associations from each quarter of real-world data analyzed. And that's what is represented in that box outlined in red at the top right corner of this graphic. In reality, those associations are risk prediction patterns of medical profiles that are significantly associated with bad clinical outcomes. Each one of those patterns that we retain in Medloom's database includes not only the quantitative confidence of the association, but also the metadata that define what kind of patient would be at risk for the adverse event associated with that pattern. Medloom's cloud of AI-driven discoveries of medical profiles tells us what kind of patient is at risk for developing a specific adverse event. Cross-referencing that cloud with an EMR system's entire patient database allows Medloom to identify patients at risk for life-threatening outcomes. As shown in the warning displayed here on Medloom's iPad app, the risk profile identified by Medloom includes not only the medications involved, but also the age, gender, and even the background conditions and symptoms that tell us what kind of patient is at risk for that adverse event. LeadHorse validated its AI-driven risk associations in an IRB-approved clinical validation study at UT Southwestern Medical Center at Dallas last year. In that study, Medloom's AI-based predictions of life-threatening adverse events were cross-referenced with 2.7 million patient records held in a data warehouse at Southwestern and representing patients from Epic EMR-using hospitals from all over North Texas. The results surprised even us. Using only a partial meds list from the entire risk pattern discovered by Medloom after an analysis of millions of real-world adverse event case reports, Medloom accurately identified 60,000 patients in the 2.7 million set who developed the specific life-threatening event Medloom said they would. In fact, Medloom got it right more than 4 out of 5 times. There's a lot to be saved for the entire healthcare economy by being that good at predicting who's at risk for and preventing life-threatening events. In recognition of that clinical validation, FDA identified 2 select vendors in 2011 for their potential ability to mine FDA's own data for safety signals earlier and more often than FDA themselves using their rules-based inference engine. One of those vendors was IBM, primarily for the potential of Watson, and one was to Eastern Research Group, to whom LeadHorse subcontracts. The award was for $10 million over a 5-year period, and it is made task order by task order. So far, our group has beaten IBM for the first 2 task orders. The decision support system vendors listed across the top of this graph make drug interaction systems that are necessary but insufficient to stop the 4,000 deaths that occur each week in the U.S. from adverse drug events. Medloom is the only decision support system built to discover 3-drug, 4-drug, even 5-drug interactions. It's the only system that applies advanced AI analytics to millions of real-world case reports to identify patients at risk at the point of care. And LeadHorse is the only vendor of decision support systems identified by the US FDA as being capable of mining FDA's own data for drug safety signals earlier and more often than FDA themselves are capable of. Medloom's AI-based risk prediction patterns are stored in the cloud. The AI-enabled Medloom bolts onto any EMR system as an embedded web app in a platform-agnostic manner. It doesn't matter whether the EMR system is from Epic, McKesson, the VA, or anyone else. Once bolted on, Medloom is as invisible to the user as Intel Inside, but it gives that system automatic and continuous access to Medloom in the cloud. Integration with an EMR system allows Medloom in the cloud to identify patients potentially at risk for death or hospitalization. Here's an example of how it works. A clinician pulls up a patient's record in their existing EMR system. Let's say it's for a patient complaining of chest pain. Medloom automatically pulls the entire medical profile from that record, except for the patient's ID, and sends that medical profile to the cloud to be compared to Medloom's database of AI-based risk predictions. It pulls that medical profile using HIPAA-compliant standards like HL7 or CCD. What it doesn't capture is a patient's ID. Remember, Medloom's risk predictions are based on real-world near real-time case reports, not on published drug interactions that everyone already knows about. Of course, we only used the FDA's data to derive Medloom's AI-driven ability to predict patients at risk for specific adverse drug events, and while our clinical validation study demonstrated that Medloom's AI-driven discoveries, based on FDA data alone, have a greater than 80% absolute predictive accuracy, we do not intend to rely on MedWatch data to drive the power of Medloom to prevent costly adverse events in the future. Rather, by virtue of having Medloom capturing every single patient encounter through integration and point-of-care support with several commercial EMR systems, we anticipate that the volume of case reports being accumulated by Medloom in real time from those commercial integrations will soon outpace the volume of reports collected passively by FDA through the MedWatch system. At that point, we will turn Medloom's AI analytics engine away from FDA's data and toward the real-world database that Medloom will be amassing in real time. Doing so should enable Medloom to update its cloud of AI-driven risk profile predictions not on a quarterly basis, as it is limited to by relying on FDA data, but as frequently as on a daily basis. That's particularly valuable when a drug may have just been approved for use, or at least just approved for use in a new indication, or even only in a new patient demographic group, like PEDS, for instance. Having to wait 3 months for the first post-marketing safety signals to be discovered can be not only scary to a pediatrician, but needlessly life-threatening to specific pediatric patient subsets. Now let's go back to an example of a warning delivered by Medloom on our iPad app after a patient record has been cross-referenced to Medloom's cloud of AI-based adverse event risk discoveries. Here you see that John Doe's red alert came about because everything about him aligns with the pattern our AI algorithm has shown to be significantly associated with a heart attack. Not only do John's meds match the pattern, but his age and gender demographics, and even his background comorbidities align with Medloom's AI-discovered risk pattern. So your clinician is offered choices. When such a warning is delivered not as a static alert, but in a controlled system tied to clinical workflow, then through the alert, the clinician can order a lab test, schedule John for a referral, or take any other action to keep John Doe out of danger and to prevent an outcome that would otherwise add to your burden of costly hospital-induced events. Of course, any of those clinical follow-through actions that are taken to validate a Medloom red alert can be captured for analysis of Medloom performance metrics. And any of those actions that ends up validating a warning provided by Medloom can be monetized. For instance, a warning that a patient may be at a 90% confidence risk for developing liver failure can be validated with a simple liver enzyme test. Switching a medication to avert that liver failure can save lives and dollars. A dashboard of feedback metrics can be provided to any Medloom customer so that Medloom can display in real time the number of lives that have been saved to date, the number of 30-day readmits that have been prevented, or the number of dollars that have been saved as a result of integrating Medloom into your EMR system. There are many benefits to be derived by using Medloom and its advanced AI analytics platform. Whether you represent a hospital, a pharmacy, a PBM, an EMR vendor, a payer organization, or a pharmaceutical company, there are specific benefits for each of you that are clinical, financial, reputational, and operational in nature. Thank you.